and welcome to another episode of Read It with Whiskey. I am your host, Laura Juntunen, and today we have a very special episode for you. Today is the first episode on Read It with Whiskey where we have two authors interviewed at the same time. So these romance authors, Sarah Smith and Skye McDonald, met on Twitter as fledgling authors seeking critique partners. It turned into a beautiful friendship and a joint podcast called Quick and Dirty Romance, and now a novel, Sips and Strokes. So let me tell you a little bit about each of these authors. Sarah Smith is the author of Faker, If You Never Come Back, and Simmer Down. She's a copywriter turned author who wants to make the world a lovelier place, one kissing story at a time. Her love of romance began when she was 8 and discovered her aunt's stash of romance novels. She's been hooked ever since. When she's not writing, you can find her hiking, eating chocolate, and perfecting her lumpia recipe. She lives in Bend, Oregon with her husband and adorable cat, Salem. The second author in this duo is Skye McDonald, and you actually met her in episode 8 when we talked about her book, Not Suitable for Work. So this is the first person who is making a second appearance on Read It with Whiskey, so she is a true veteran of the show, and I'm so happy to have her back. So Skye is an author and a personal development coach, and her series, the Anti-Bell series, features grits, girls raised in the South. These sassy grits learning to love themselves before they can claim their happily ever after. Spoiler, they always do. And Skye's coaching method includes fitness and life skills to teach individuals to do the same. When not writing sexy books or cheering for you to live your best life, Skye can be found out on a new adventure, usually with her pup at her side. We had so much fun recording this episode for you guys, and I cannot wait for you to dive in. So let's just get into this episode. Welcome to Read It with Whiskey, an interview podcast highlighting self-published authors. I am your host, Laura Juntunen. The purpose behind this podcast is to help authors grow their audience while also introducing readers to their new favorite authors. Let's get to know the person behind the page. Sit back, sip some whiskey, and lean in to these self-published authors. How about a little Laura J. Live update? And we are going to keep it sweet and short and to the point today because I really want you guys to jump into this episode with Sarah Skye. So for the update for Laura J. Live, we are still in Camp Nano, you guys, and it is 20 days in, and I gotta say, I wish I was a little further along than I am. However, I've still got 10 more days to go. So I definitely will keep you more updated. If you follow me on Instagram, that's the fastest way to see how the progress is going on a more minute by minute, day by day basis. So if you can follow me on Instagram at Laura J. Live, and you can also follow this podcast at Read It with Whiskey. And on those platforms, or on that platform on Instagram, I talk a lot more about my writing process. Like I said, minute to minute. So if you want more live updates, definitely jump in there. Otherwise, I am just plugging along on book 2 of the Shockwave series. Book 1 is out now, available for purchase on Amazon. Transient Pulse is the name, by the way. And I do have hardback copies that are signed that I have available. Where you can purchase those is on my website, www.laurajlive.com. All right. Thank you so much for your support in this podcast. I have been loving the love that I am feeling and receiving from everybody who has been listening in. I really, really appreciate all of you. And if you feel the need to support me in any further ways, I have a great outlet that you can do that through my Patreon account. So if you go to www.patreon.com/readitwithwhiskey, you can choose one of 3 tiers to help support me with this podcast. Each tier has different extra little perks, I'll say, and those perks include exclusive interview content that is not in the regular podcast episodes, as well as the video content from the interviews and some little indie author episodes here and there. I like to sprinkle those in as well. All right, let us get back into this episode. Let's go talk with Sarah and Skye. Hello, Sarah Skye, and welcome to Read It with Whiskey. How are you guys doing today?
Great. I'm great. Thank you, Laura.
I'm really good. It's
really excited to talk to you.
Yes, I am so excited to have you two on. And for our listeners, this is our first book we're featuring on Read It with Whiskey, where we have two authors. And so we have Sarah Smith and Skye McDonald, and you guys have written this book together. So to start off this episode, let's talk about why did both of you individually want to be writers? Why did you become authors? And then why did you decide to join forces? So let's go ahead and start with you, Sarah. Why did you want to become an author?
I just have always really liked writing. Ever since I was a little kid, writing random weird stories was just like what my favorite thing to do was. And that just like held my whole life. Like, I feel like I had a lot of interests, and some faded and some I just didn't end up caring about. But writing was the one stronghold that I've always wanted to write a romance book. And I finally did a few years ago. So yeah.
Yay. All right. And how about you, Skye?
I wrote when I was a teenager too. I wrote some very like epic sagas and notebooks, but I didn't really want to be a writer until one day this image of two desks in a room came to me, and I started writing my first book, Not Suitable for Work, just kind of based on this idea that had floated in my head. And it kind of just all started from there, I guess.
Yes, and for those of you listening, Skye, this is her second time on the show. And so if you want to listen to her full episode, it's episode 8 that came out on March 2nd. And so if you want more of her story, go ahead and go back to that episode. So now tell us, how'd you guys meet? Why did you guys decide to write a book together? This is so exciting.
Well, we met on Twitter. We have met in real life one time because we are bi-coastal friends. I'm East Coast, Sarah's West Coast, but we met on Twitter when I put out a call for beta readers, aka critique partners, for Not Suitable for Work. And Sarah and I had been buddies in the writing community there for a while. And she was like, yes, I'll do it. And it was a perfect match. She gave me the kind of feedback that I really, really needed and wanted to hear, both the good and the constructive, like, you need to change this. And that's where we started. That was like the kickoff of like a great, great relationship, both collaboratively and as friends. And then Sarah, I believe it was you who suggested the joint book author project, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think last year, because, pandemic quarantine times, none of us were really able to do a whole lot. And I was just like, I've always wanted to write a book with somebody, and like, you are somebody who I think I can do that with, because I feel like we have a similar work style, and we write the same genre, and I like you as a person because you're my friend. And I just thought, like, let's go for it. And we did it, and it worked out really well. Like, it only took us like 6 weeks to nail down the or to actually write out the first draft. And I was really surprised, because not that I thought it was going to go badly, I just thought it would be a lot more like complicated and difficult, but it wasn't. Like, it flowed really well, and I think we work really well together.
Totally. Yeah, it was like 6 weeks.
6 weeks. That's incredible. And we'll jump more into that whole process about writing a book together. But really quick, if you guys want to tell our listeners about your other works. And I know, Sarah, you have published a little bit more on the traditional side. If you want to share the differences between traditional and self-publishing, and Sips and Strokes is self-published through Amazon. So you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I write contemporary romance, rom-coms. I've written the books Faker, If You Never Come Back, and Simmer Down. And yeah, Faker and Faker and Simmer Down are traditionally published. If You Never Come Back is a novella that I self-published to kind of like dip my toe in the self-publishing world. And yeah, I mean, I love putting books out in the world, period. And I don't really care how I do it, but it is very different, traditional versus self-publishing. I think maybe a lot of people don't realize when you traditionally publish, you don't have a control over a lot as the author. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it just means like there are a lot of people who are like giving you editorial feedback and editing and designing your cover and figuring out how to market your book. And when you are self-published or indie published, you get to do all of that on your own, which is kind of exciting because you get to be the boss and nobody can tell you what to do. So, yeah.
All right. And then Skye, we talked about your series, the Antebellum series. And so I think if people want to listen about that, let's have them go back to your episode, because we get all into the details there.
We do. I completely agree.
Okay. So you had actually touched on this, Sarah, about how we write books because we want to write books. So it doesn't really matter if it's traditional or self-published. we just want to tell our stories. So with that being said, what is your favorite part about being an author? Both of you guys can answer this question.
Honestly, I really like being able to write romance stories and putting them out in the world and getting readers excited about them and hearing the really lovely feedback from people. That has been a really special thing for me, especially, so I'm half Filipino, half Caucasian. And I mean, I read a lot when I was a kid, and I didn't ever read stories where or like people like me with my background were ever the main characters. So now I get some feedback from people who are of a similar background saying this is really cool that I can read a story that the main character grew up the way that I did or has the same background as me. So that's been really special to see people give that sort of feedback for me.
Yeah, definitely inspiring. How about you, Skye?
I just love it when people say, your book gave me all the feels. I so enjoyed it. I felt like I knew the characters. Anytime that it really resonates with a book or tells me that like it meant something to them to be able to read it, it's just a huge, huge honor. And every time that happens, I'm just like, all the heart eye emojis, as I say, but really it is very true. I mean, nothing is more satisfying than knowing that your words meant something to somebody. And I think that is definitely the most rewarding part.
Definitely. I love that. Okay, so now let's dive into Sips and Strokes a little bit. I'm so excited to talk to you guys about this. So, Skye, go ahead and tell us, what is Sips and Strokes all about?
Sips and Strokes is, I just came upon this phrase the other day. It's a fomance. Okay, this is my new favorite word.
Okay.
It is a fake dating rom-com where we have Lily, the main character, and she is being roped into attending her ex's wedding because he's just so perfect and her parents won't say no. And then but Lily is an art professor and she has a new figure model for her class for the year. And that happens to be Calder Ross, who is a romance novel cover model and an Instagram famous model, and rather a bit of a Playboy kind of rep, but he's trying to become the brand ambassador for his childhood distillery because he grew up in Scotland. And so he wants to be a whiskey rep now, and he needs to clean up his image. So they're going to help each other out while he also is the nude model in her classroom.
So steamy.
Yeah.
So where did the inspiration come from this? Why a professor? Why a model? Why the backstories? There's so many different tropes that you guys play with. So where did this inspiration come from?
I think for me, I was thinking of all the stuff that I like to read in a romance, and I love fake dating trope like that. I think is so fun. I love where Calder is Scottish, and I mean, who doesn't love a Scottish accent, right? I love like weddings to be the setting, or like an element of a wedding to be involved in a romance. I just think that is really like fun and tried and true in the romance genre. I don't know, that's why I really enjoyed writing this. Skye, how about you?
Yeah, when we brainstormed the book, we played out a couple of different like hooks or leads into books, and several of them seemed fun. And for some reason, this one just started to come together. So like, for example, the fact that Calder is a romance novel cover model, that's a lot to say. There's got to be a shorter phrase for that. I know, but like that just kind of fell out as we were writing it. It was like, oh, that would be funny if he was this, because like at first he was like a model and a Playboy, but it was like, oh no, it'd be funnier if he was. So we definitely played with a lot of tropes with it. And then from there, like we liked the nude modeling thing. That seemed like fun. But I remember just kind of thinking like about what would be like Sarah said, what would be fun. But also I remember it became really important that Lily, through this relationship, was starting to say what she wanted and step up for herself, because she is very much a doormat in the beginning to her parents. And it's like, she can't say no, but in falling in love and fake dating Calder, like it becomes this thing where he's like empowering her and encouraging her to be her full self. And that kind of came out too. And it was really, really nice. So it's kind of like not a jumble, but an interesting cocktail of tropes, and yet also like these like growth pieces that we enjoyed.
Yes, I definitely loved the growth that you saw, or that I read through Lily's story, and how she really came into her own and she realized what she wanted. And I liked that Calder kept saying, okay, tell me what you want, kind of thing. It was just really fun to read and kind of grow with her as the reader. So tell us a little bit about the writing process. Writing one book on your own is difficult enough. Why would anyone want to write a book with another person? No, I love the idea of it, but I would love for you guys to tell us, how did that work? Did you guys like kind of combine talents for every single chapter, or did you guys take turns? And also there's 2 points of views in the story. So did that play into how you guys wrote it all?
Yeah, I mean, we figured the easiest thing would be, since it's dual POV, Lily and Calder, obviously, that I write Lily and Skye write Calder. Also, Lily and I have the same background. Lily's Filipino American, and that's my same background too. And Skye, not that Skye is Scottish, but I feel like she did a better job of writing a Scottish Skye than I ever could. So, but yeah, I mean, we spent a lot of time on the phone, but that's how we brainstormed and outlined everything. And then we just, we took it a couple chapters at a time. We would just talk on the phone about like, okay, so this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen when, Lily comes in, and then Calder's chapter is going to do this. And then Lily does this, and then Calder does this. And then we would read what each other wrote to make sure it flowed. And then we'd hop on the phone again in a couple of days and plan out the next chunk. I don't know. Am I missing something, Skye? Did we do anything else? Okay.
No. In fact, Laura, your point is very valid. Like the idea of writing a book is hard enough on your own. But I have to say, like, this is the first full new book I've written in a long time. And it was incredibly easy. Like writing with Sarah. And I don't think that you get that lucky all of the time. Like I can't imagine writing with many, if anybody else, honestly, but just the way I knew how Sarah's process worked because I have read her, like I've beta read and critique partnered for her before. But yeah, it just worked, and it was super easy to do. And yeah, I always say like I was the boy because I played massive amounts of Barbies when I was a kid, and like somebody had to be Ken, right? So I was the boy. But the really fun thing about it was when I would get Sarah's chapters, because of course we would strategize and be like, okay, now Lily's going to tell the story about this part. But when I would get Sarah's chapters, it was very much like reading a new book, but about a character that I was guiding. So it was like, what's Calder going to do now? But I'm like narrating half of the story. So it was both like very exciting, but then it was also amazing. And I think this is part of why I say I don't know if I could write with many, if anybody else, because the things that Sarah would put in would like almost uncannily overlap things that I had written that she had not gotten to read yet. So like the vibe was incredibly synced. And it did take, I mean, obviously there were changes to make and like details to fix, but like the way in which it clicked together, it was just like, it was great. It was amazing.
Yeah, I was so curious about that. So now knowing that and going back in my mind and going through the chapters, some of the favorite scenes that I had, it's incredible that you guys wrote independently for the characters, but everything just worked so well. You guys are so lucky to find each other and have that ability to communicate in a way that brings this story alive. So props to you guys. I don't know that I would ever be able to write a book with someone else. I'll never say never though. It could happen. Okay. So I will say one thing that I was so scared about when I was reading the book. I'm not going to give any spoilers about what happens at the end, but in the beginning, when Lily basically uses Calder to like pretend that he's her boyfriend, I was so nervous that that would be like a sticky situation in the future because she wouldn't know about his need for a person as well. And so when all that kind of resolved and then you find out, okay, both of them know that they're using each other, I was like, oh, thank goodness. But how did you decide? Because that was such a big, like, I was just so nervous the whole time I was reading it. So how did you decide that they would both know about the other person's situation? Or was that kind of just the idea that came from it? Because when I was reading it, I was like, I really hope Calder brings that to her attention because I don't want her to find out later. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I just hadn't thought about it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Like, no, I think we always wanted Calder, like there to be almost like a negotiation. Like, I need you for this. Oh, well, that's convenient because I need you for this. Mm-hmm. Like that sort of mutual thing. I definitely think, but I also think it kind of falls in line with what Calder did in terms of like saying, you need to say what you want. And like, if you want a fake boyfriend, then let's talk about this, right? Like that was kind of step one. Mm-hmm. I don't know, Sarah, it was always part of it, right?
Yeah, I think that was very, like, when we were brainstorming and outlining and trying to figure out what was going to happen when in the book, that was a very, like, we never really talked about, like, oh, should there be this big thing later on where they're finding out, oh, like they were always going to be on equal footing in that they both needed each other for something. But that was okay because, like, they're both in a bind and you can help me and I can help you. And that, I just thought that the setup was really cute because from that point on, they could then build up the relationship and the tension could build up and their actual attraction for each other could really, like, I don't know, just get things even more amped up. So I can't remember that it was ever going to be like an issue. Like we knew right off the bat, like, nope, they need to use each other and they're 100% okay with that.
Yeah, there was a mutual benefit on both sides. So,
yeah.
Okay, that answers my question there. And then, okay, so, and you kind of talked about it a little bit, building up that intimacy and that relationship. So tell me about the process for writing the scene in the hay wagon. Because, oh my goodness, talk about it.
Okay, I think Skye, that was you kicked that off, so you take that.
That was my scene. I don't want to give away too much, but what's your specific question, Laura? What do you want to know? Just how it came to be?
Yeah, go for it.
She had been, I don't know, we wanted a place where sizzle really happened and it had been time, and she was feeling like, it was kind of like this moment where she was wavering between like super frustrated and super like wanting him, because they had been like, it had been a little bit of like blurring lines already kind of thing. And then I don't know, like a hayride, like a secluded hayride seemed like fun. But it seemed like a good place to really kick off a little bit of steam. I'm wondering if you're talking about like a specific element of it, or like the way in which she says what she wants specifically without telling anybody too much. But there was definitely a part of that where she's like making a demand about some things that it just kind of came out as I was writing it. And I was like, oh, I didn't expect her to do that. But okay, sure. And Sarah was like, no, that's good. Let's do that. And I was like, okay, because it's all about her saying, I want to do this. I want you to do this. And so it became this just like, I don't know, fall hayride kind of thing. But yeah, it seemed like the right place for a little bit of sizzle. So it was very, very fun to write.
It was great.
Oh, thank you.
I love that scene. Okay, and speaking of scenes, that was one of my favorites for more of the steamier stuff that happens. And without giving anything away, can you guys share what your favorite scenes were that happened in the book, or maybe your favorite scene to write?
I love the whole book, obviously. It's really cute. I love it, obviously. But I really like the scene where Lily teaches Calder how to draw. I think I know that that's not the most exciting scene, but I just think it's just really cute. Like they're doing something so simple and he's kind of like, I suck at this. She's like, no, it's really easy. I can teach you. And she does. And it's just this moment where like, they're being intimate, but not in a physical way. They're kind of being vulnerable and sharing parts of themselves that they haven't yet. And I don't know, I just think that was a really cute.
They're growing on more of an intellectual level, and it brings depth into the story. I really like that scene too.
It's funny that you say that one, because I was going to pick the one where Calder teaches her about drinking whiskey.
Yeah, that's a good one too, though.
That's a
because like she does not like the whiskey. She is like pretending to drink, and he's like, no, I'm going to show you. And so like taking her through. So it's very much a similar kind of like feel, but from his point of view, like teaching her something that he really cares about. Also too, I really like, without spoiling anything, I really do like the resolution, like the final, the way it comes together at the end. I thought that was really, really nice the way we pulled that together. But yes, I like the whiskey part. Not surprisingly.
I like the whiskey part too. That was fun for me. Obviously, read it with whiskey. I love my whiskey. So who has the history with the banana s'mores? Is that a personal experience?
So I was the person who came up with that. I've actually never personally had them, but I can't remember. I was watching a cooking show on the Food Network, and I don't remember who it was, but they made banana s'mores, and this was like probably 15 years ago. I don't know why I remember this because it's not an important thing to my life at all. But I remember thinking, oh, that looks really good. And I never made it. And I really don't know why. It just popped in my head. I'm like, oh, that would be cute if that was like a cute childhood snack. And he made it for her. And
See, it was meant to be. You watched that episode because it was supposed to be in this book.
Clearly.
Exactly.
15 years later.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the characters a little bit. I know we kind of dived into it already, but do you have a favorite? Obviously, you each wrote one of the characters. So let's talk about, besides the main two, do you have any favorite characters of the rest of the cast?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
But many of them. I like his sister because of the foil aspect that she provides, right? And she actually, as a bit of trivia on the book, she appeared like once or twice in text message at first. And then we realized she really needed to play a bigger role of like coming in those moments because, and like, this isn't a spoiler, but his sister is in Scotland still. And so she becomes this like text message foil as he's figuring out what on earth to do about catching the feels with a fake dating or a fake relationship. So she was funny to me. Like she was a fun like voice to write. But then I really think I like the fiance, like the ex-boy or the
Marco.
No, not Marco.
Harmony.
Harmony. Yeah. I'm drawing a blank on the name. I'm sorry. Harmony. Yes. I really like her because she's again more than a two-dimensional, like ended up making her more than the two-dimensional sort of stereotypical character that kind of she sort of started out being. And I liked the way we did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Harmony is I know that she starts off as kind of a jerk, and she was a bitch when she was a kid to Lily, which is not cool, but I think she ends up being a good person because we were all shitty people at some point in our lives, so we can make it right. I think that's what she shows everybody. I really liked Auntie Mayla, Lily's Auntie Mayla. I think she was just a funny person who just would come in at weird times and just like kind of disrupt things, but it was fine because it was funny. And I wrote her because like that's kind of how like my mom's family with her sisters, like that's how they were to each other, not in a mean or negative way, but like they bickered and they got on each other's nerves, but it was always really funny because in the end they came together and it was fine. So I had a lot of fun. Like,
yeah, I liked her too.
Well, but then we also have the friend, right? And so, we'll leave that one aside because that may be something for the future. We're thinking about another book, but we're not there
so
yet.
That was actually my next question is this a standalone? Is this a potential part of a series? What's happening next for Sarah Skye?
Well,
or can you not tell us?
We're brainstorming. We definitely think, kind of get this book out into the world and, see how that feels. So far, it's felt amazing. Like, honestly, it has. But we are, I think we're thinking about maybe picking up Morgan, the other friend, and really maybe doing something with her. Yeah. Sarah, is that too much? Are we giving too much away?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair to say. I think I'm the same way. Like, I'm really excited about Sips and Stroke, this book, I think, or Sips and Strokes with an S at the end. I just think like it's hard to, or at least for me, it's hard to like visualize like where exactly is everything gonna go, because I want to see like how things are,
how it is now with this book coming out. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we definitely are maybe possibly.
Definitely maybe
possibly. Okay. So before we take off today, I do want to talk to you guys about your own podcast. So tell our listeners about your podcast, what you guys do together, why you guys joined forces for that as well.
Our podcast is the Quick and Dirty Romance Podcast, where we give you the insights on being a romance author in 30 minutes or less, and then we pull out and wrap it up. But we promise to leave you satisfied. It came about, again, because of the genius of Sarah and, our collaborative powerhouse. I'm going to say it, but, it's one of those things. And I say this all the time. Sarah's amazing because she's the type of person like me who's like, hey, we should do this. And then we actually do it. It's like we make these things happen. And that's one of the things that it makes her such a great friend, quite frankly. Aww. But yeah, when we were in Nashville celebrating both of our first book releases, Not Suitable for Work and Faker, we were like, we should maybe do a podcast or something. And like, we just started doing it. It's really fun though.
That's exciting. How about you, Sarah? Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for thinking that I was a genius guy, because I'm not. I remember I was really irritated because if anybody who like has done promo for a book release or whatever, like I feel like there are a million things that like get tossed your way and then like 3% of them end up working out. So I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of getting like, oh, we'll let you know on this. Let's just do a podcast. So that stemmed from my frustration, like with everything else in my life. So
But we talk about the frustrations. We talk about what it's like to be an author, right? And like the strategies of writing, everything from that to the steamy scenes to just like what we think about the genre in general. So mostly we just kind of talk about writer's life. So yeah, it's fun though.
That's exciting. Hopefully some of my listeners will find that inspiring and hop on over and listen into you guys over there. But this wouldn't be Read It with Whiskey without talking a little bit about whiskey. So what is your favorite whiskey to drink and why?
It's a very tough question. I believe the last time I was on, I mentioned Talisker because it is from the Isle of Skye in Scotland. And so this time I'm going to say I have been enjoying myself a Balvenie 14 in a Caribbean cask since my birthday in February. And I am working through that with a impressive speed, quite frankly. But yes, I like that very much. And also I'm going to give a shout out to the Nashville-based Belmead whiskey, based on the Belmead neighborhood and plantation down there, well, former plantation, obviously. But it is a very, very nice Nashville whiskey. So Balvenie and Belmead are my things right now.
How about you, Sarah?
I actually, funny story, I don't really drink a whole lot and I don't know anything about whiskey. I'm really sorry. But what I do know is that so Skye actually taught me how to drink whiskey when we were in Nashville. So I know how to now. And so I would just defer to whatever Skye likes. So I'm going to go with what she said.
That's really the best thing to do is just follow someone who drinks whiskey and try what they have. Otherwise, you're just going to end up drinking the stuff you shouldn't be drinking. So
right, like wild turkey or something. Like,
right.
Yeah.
You never know. What are you drinking right now, Laura?
Right now, I think we actually talked about this when you were on last time, the Four Roses.
Okay.
So I actually have that and I have been sipping my way through and I'm loving it.
Yes.
But I also found a new whiskey, Bird Dog, and there's a bunch of flavors and I can't remember exactly where it is. I don't have it anywhere near me in my office. But there's a bunch of different flavors and it's interesting because usually I don't go for the flavored whiskeys as much. So I've got two bottles at home, just sipping my way through them.
Nice. Cheers.
Yes. All right. So thank you so much for being on the show. Can you tell our listeners where can they find you each individually and where can they find Sips and Strokes?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Goodreads and LinkedIn and Facebook. I am at Writer Skye McD.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I'm at author Sarah S. And please check out Sips and Strokes when it comes out. It comes out on April 20th. And you can get that in ebook or paperback form on Amazon.
And our joint account is Quick and Dirty Romance on Instagram and Quick and Dirty Rom on Twitter. That is where you will find everything about both our podcast and, of course, Sips and Strokes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the show today. I had fun.
Thank you. We did too, Laura.
It was the best. Thank you so much, Laura.
I had so much fun talking with Sarah and Skye, and I was just so grateful to have them on this show. They're both such amazing women, and they have so many books out there for you to go and read. Romance is something that everybody needs every once in a while, and these books are full of them. So Sips and Strokes is actually out today. It launches today, the same day that this episode aired, so April 20th, 2021. So if you have not purchased the book yet, go ahead and get it. Once you read it, let me know what you thought because I absolutely loved it. I loved the characters and I loved learning about these characters in more depth within this episode, within this interview. So keep in mind that we don't know yet if they're going to bring us another book or not as Sarah Skye, but both Sarah and Skye have a bunch of other books that you can read. If you are into romance, check out their Instagrams. All of those links and everything are in the description box below this episode. And And next week, you guys, we are bringing back poetry. We are going to hit a nonfiction author. Her name is Natalie Nesenzi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Natalie and I are going to talk about her book, The Aftermath of Unrest. This is a combination of poetry and memoir. It outlines a lot of her experience through quarantine from early 2020. So if you are interested in poetry, if you're interested in learning about how New York looked and felt throughout quarantine, this is something that you really need to pick up. This book, The Aftermath of Unrest, was absolutely beautiful. Not only the words, but also the cover of this book is just absolutely gorgeous. So tune in next week. That is going to be April 27th for my talk with Natalie. All right, I'll talk to you then.